Hey guys, Matty B here. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome to another video. Hope you enjoyed my series on autism and pretending to be normal. Got some good feedback on that, so really positive and empowering to hear that I'm helping other people with these videos, so they're doing their job even if they only help one person. It's going to be a new series for you now, 3-parter, which is all about a parent's perspective of autism. I'm going to be chatting with my mum, getting her perspective from her and my dad around bringing me up, what it was like to care for me as an autistic child, all the extra support and provisions that had to be given for me to be the best version of myself. Decided to do it as a 3-parter because there's so much information. Didn't want to cram it into just one video. So part 1 first, we're going to be talking about the early years with my upbringing from around ages of 2.5 up to about age 8 or 9. Hope this video will help some of you watching who have a child with autism or know someone who has. If it helps one parent to know where to go and what to do, gives you a clear picture of how to care for someone like me in the early years. Fantastic. Well, the video will have done its job. So if you sit back, relax, enjoy this chat with my mum, and we'll have a watch of all the information she has to give to us to give us a better idea of what it was like for her and for other parents as well. Okay, mum, so part 1, where we get parents' perspective of caring for a child with autism. Thank you for being here. You okay? How are you doing?
Okay, thank you.
Good. So if we start at the beginning, and talk us through when you first started spotting the signs that something may be different with me compared to my 2 older brothers.
Yes, your 2 older brothers, they were ordinary, naughty boys, but they understood the social rules of what was expected of them. You never did. And everything that they took for granted socially and the boundaries, you had to be taught because you didn't understand them. And where your brothers would stand quietly or sit quietly or watch the television quietly, you would be absolutely hyperactive and not understand the world around you. And then I realised something was amiss. So I went to my GP. I was told I was a fussy parent, or I was comparing my children. But thankfully, when you went to nursery and the first year mainstream, all these issues were coming through and the teachers could understand where I was coming from, and so they put you in touch with the pupil support team, and that's what started the ball rolling of your special educational needs.
Yeah. So expanding on where I was being hyperactive and not understanding social rules, with the is there anything extra the parents with the teachers were saying to you with that, what they were noticing about me while I was in school when you weren't there?
Yeah, children would sit in their class and they would understand what the teacher is telling them, and they could answer the correct question. Well, how could you answer the correct question when you couldn't understand what was being told to you? And that is where you would be disruptive, because you didn't understand the classroom and the world around you. That was one thing. And another thing which I thought was a bit crazy, actually. Obviously in Wales you have to learn Welsh as part of the curriculum. Well, if you couldn't understand English, how could you understand Welsh?
Yeah.
And that was amazing to me, really, that was brought up. And talking about, we'll come on to friendships. Even at 3 or 4, children have their own groups of friends, which you never did. And so you used to run around the playground and climb the drain pipes, which wasn't a good idea at the time,
No.
but you thought it was good. It's something for you to do. And that wasn't great with your school. And I think basically it was teachers are expecting pupils to sit there quietly, not rock the boat, answer nicely. Well, life isn't like that. When you've got any other kind of children that's got issues, they don't understand the normal education system. And that's where the frustration starts, and that comes out. If you can't say this audibly in a sentence, it's going to come out in your behaviour. And that's what happened in your first year of school until you went to the Lindens.
So yeah. So in I think it was in between the normal school and the Linden school. After lots of trying to look for a diagnosis, being told you were being fussy and comparing your children, you finally spoke to someone, an expert, who could tell you what the issue was.
Yeah.
So if you can go into detail on that.
So after going back to my GPs and lots of visits to the local hospital, we had an appointment with Professor Bill Fraser, who's renowned in autism, and he took 5 minutes to diagnose me. He said, "I'm very sorry, Mrs. Bennett, but I do believe that your son has Asperger's syndrome." And I said, "Hallelujah. Now I know what it is, and I can roll my sleeves up, and with the school and our family, we can work this out." And we still got that statement today, actually, because it's although you've outgrown it, you've still got that statement in black and white. And that's when we started the ball rolling of going to the school that met your educational needs, which was, actually, you had the best education out of your 2 brothers, because you went from a class of 32 to 6 with 2 teachers. And this may sound horrible, but I always say teaching a chap or a person on the spectrum or autism is like training a chimpanzee. You train and train and train them until they eventually get it. And it could take a long time and commitment, but they eventually get it in the end. And with that, like that kind of thing, is that once you had all this knowledge and you understood the world around you and what was expected of you, you didn't need your unit, your special school anymore. You needed mainstream. But you couldn't cope with a huge comprehensive school. You needed the old-fashioned type of education, small classes behind a desk, and the teacher come to you. And of course that is private education. And that was provided for you until you were 16. And you passed, was it 9 or 10 GCSEs?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and all the sciences and the physics and the maths, because it was black and white, wasn't it? You know, it was structured. Maths doesn't lie.
Yeah. So when, as you say, trying to get the diagnosis, back then this was early 90s, and back then not as much was known about autism as there is now. So a lot of people said you were being overprotective, comparing me to other people and just being fussy. When you finally got the diagnosis, can you go into a bit more detail on what Bill Fraser and everyone else said during the diagnosis?
Yes, and by this time as well, when you're in school, lots of 4-year-olds had their group of friends, and you never did. And that's one of the questions that I asked Bill Fraser. Will you ever have friends? And he said that you will have friends, but not in the conventional way that adults and children have friends. You would have friends from the workplace or your hobbies. And that was great comfort to me, because I knew in the end you wouldn't be so lonely. And he suggested as well that once you go to your school to meet your educational needs, what they did in the day, he said you'd be far better off for all of you if you carried on that format at home as well, not just having all this structure at school and then coming home and it's mayhem because you're going backwards. So that's what we did. And he also said that each year you mature with all the hard work that everybody puts into you. You will change and understand the world around you. And usually, as he said to me, usually it's every 7-year blocks of maturity. And when I look back, yeah, it was.
Yeah, so sticking with the Lindens and the special education, if you can go into a bit more detail on what extra education was provided for me that my two brothers didn't necessarily need.
Okay, so like for instance, mainstream children, they could be taught a subject and it's explained to them, and they have the ability to visualize what's being explained to them. People on the spectrum haven't got that ability, so you have to go outside in the world and actually do what you're being taught. Like for instance, cookery class. You would 6 of you would sit around in a circle and you decide what you're going to cook. So you would write that down, and of course that's spelling and punctuation and English language and whatever, and you decide what you're going to cook. And then you go to the shop and you would choose the ingredients, and you would come back to school, you would cook it, and then you would eat it, because that's the circle, and that's how you were taught. Another instance was islands. Your school wasn't far off from Flat Home and Steep Home, so you can go on the beach on the front and look at Flat Home and Steep Home, and of course there's islands on the road, and you would walk along roads and you would look at the different islands and what shape they were, and sometimes they're flat and like a triangle, sometimes they're round with trees in the middle, and you would draw it and you would all discuss what you were looking at, what type of island it was, and you went back to school and you would write down as the project you were learning about or what you saw. So that's the kind of education that you had.
That's a brilliant insight into how people like me need to have it actually demonstrated to them rather than just explained, which to this day now is still how I learn. Even where I work, if someone just says to me, this is how you do this task, well, that doesn't work for me. I need someone to give me an example to say, like, well, if I was doing that task, Matthew, this is how I would do it, and that's much more beneficial for me. So that's spot on.
But what was funny as well is, like you said in previous videos, you have got a photographic memory, and what was funny to me when you were smaller, I would say, well, Nick, this is what we're going to do. We would recite what we're going to do. And the day after, I would slightly tweak it. But you would say, well, can you remember? I've got a photographic memory, and I can remember exactly what you said. So this, please, what we're going to do.
And in the Lindens as well, they knew as well that I didn't understand social rules and social cues like my two older brothers would have. So I vaguely remember classes we had with Mrs. Scotland. If you can go into some detail on that for us. Looking at like different faces and...
Yes. So, as you say, it's very hard to read the room and facial recognition. So you'd have pictures of faces that were sad, happy, sarcastic, crying, and Mrs. Scotland will explain to you why you've got a smiling face of the picture, why they're happy. And it's nice that they're happy. Or a scowl where the face is not happy, and try to explain to you maybe that person is not very happy, so you have to, maybe you could say, well, I'm very sorry you're not very happy, rather than saying, oh, hello, how are you? Because you wouldn't understand that read the face.
Yeah.
And another instance, she would explain to you all the things you would, if you were going to the beach, you would have to decide all the things you would take to the beach. Bucket and spade, chair, a picnic. Then you would talk about what was going to be inside the picnic, what you would build, looking for shells, because that is broadening your imagination, not just going to the beach.
Yeah.
That's all part of speech therapy, because people think speech therapy is about speaking. It's not. It's about the whole world around you. If you went to a park, you would ask somebody, what is going on in the park? Who's in the park? Are you on swings? Are you on the slide? Are they playing football? That's all speech therapy.
Yeah. I didn't. Yeah, unless you told me, I would have assumed it was just the way you talk as well.
It's the whole world around you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That mainstream children take for granted because they can visually see it. Yeah. I could ask you to do any kind of job, scientifically, or writing, or reading, or unplug something, and you would do it really, really well. But ask you to make up a story, and even now you couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Because you can't use your imagination.
Yeah.
Mm.
And when we were talking off camera, you mentioned that it's not just in school you need all the structure and the extra provisions. You have to do it yourself at home and in the bigger world as well.
Yeah, when you first started the London school, and I have to say that you were so lucky because these schools were available to you when you were growing up, which is a long time ago now. And they're not now; they're just units, and I think it's so sad. But there we are. This all comes down to money. When you first started your school, I said to the headmistress, I want to carry on what you're learning, what Matthew's being taught, the structure and education in school. I want to carry it on at home, and that's what I did. And it was ordinary things like cooking and gardening and shopping and waiting in line. You could understand. You couldn't get it into your little mind. Why do the mums just stand there and do nothing when they are in a queue, when you wanted to run round? And I had to explain to you, well, they're not like robots. Nothing's going on in their mind. They're thinking, I'm going to go to the next shop and I'm going to buy this and that. Or I'm going to, what can I make for tea tonight? What's in my fridge? Oh, everything's going on in their mind. You just don't know about it. And I had to explain to you that while you're waiting and you're bored, think of a poem or sing a song that's in your mind. And that helped you a great deal. And I didn't realise that I took for granted what was going on, but you never did until you were taught it. And then again, it didn't come in a flash. You were taught this over weeks and weeks and weeks. It takes patience and commitment and time.
Yeah, 100%. And with waiting in line and not understanding they're just standing there doing nothing. Good example of that as well, which I mentioned in a previous video. In a book I once read, there was a kid in a classroom with a school teacher who showed him a Smarties tube, asked him what was inside. He assumed it was Smarties. She opens it and there's a pencil inside. She closes it and says, right, if your mum or dad comes in, I don't open this tube and I ask them what's inside. What would they answer? And the kid said a pencil, because an autistic child doesn't understand that other people have different minds and different perceptions to their own.
And disciplining a child on the spectrum is totally different to disciplining mainstream children. When you discipline a mainstream child, they could be embarrassed and say, especially in grounded people, I'm embarrassed now. And put their head down and say, I won't do that again. You never did. It washed over you like duck over water over duck, whatever. And you never got embarrassed. But I had to flip it and say, well, actually, Matthew, you're so naughty, you're not embarrassed, but you're embarrassing me. So I had to put a little bit of a guilt trip on you. So how do you feel that I am totally embarrassed by your behaviour? Sometimes you got it, sometimes you didn't. But that was, in the end, that was maturity. And another instance, if you were not doing as you're told time and time again, take away your favourite toy for 5 minutes and say, when you can behave, you can have your toy back. I once, it was in the shop and a parent said to me, my goodness me, your child needs a damn good hiding. And I said to them, if I gave my child a damn good hiding and the autism was knocked out of him, I would have done it a long time ago.
That's really good insight. And if anyone's watched any programs that feature a child with autism, they'll see in the storyline exactly that it's better to make the child feel guilty that they're not following the rules, because people with autism have a high level of morality and being sticklers for the rules. So if you can, like you say, flip it on its head and make them think of it that way, it's much more effective.
And you've got to be strong. You've got to say, you won't do this, you won't do this. He's not going to say, would you like to do this? No, you will be doing this. So it does take a strength of character.
And another thing which I didn't really understand, because I took everything literally, was metaphors or figures of speech.
When you were about 3, when it was raining very heavily outside, I said to you, oh Matthew, it's raining cats and dogs. And you said, well, I can't see any cats and dogs running from the sky. And then when you were about 4, I was preparing the evening meal and I said, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. Well, your eyes nearly popped out of your head and you said, Mummy, are you really going to eat a horse? So I had to, that was one of my missions, was to teach you all kinds of metaphors. But again, that took time.
So I think other metaphors like the pot calling the kettle black.
Yes, that's right. Being a hypocrite.
It's coming to the end of the of part 1. So before we finish, anything we've not discussed that you want to cover? Any advice you can give to any parents watching who might be caring for an autistic child?
Well, I'm no expert, and I can only advise you what I have learned over many, many years. And basically it is time, commitment and structure and mental strength. And all those put together You will get there because it is hard work, but once you put the hard work in, you will reap the rewards.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the one silver lining with when you're caring for someone with autism is because of their morality and rule following. When you give them feedback, especially as they mature, they take it on really quickly.
Yes, and another thing is you have to teach. That's another big lesson you have to teach children on the spectrum with autism, that they are too honest. And we were on a bus once and you said to me, "Mummy, why has that lady got purple hair?" And I had to explain to you, well, she has got purple hair, yes, but you mustn't say it out loud because you could upset her. So over time, you progressed and you thought that in your mind. You nearly did really well until you got off the bus. Off the bus, you said to me, "Mummy, I did very well, didn't I? I didn't tell you that lady had purple hair." So that is the way that you progress. Slowly and slowly, but you get there in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. Nice finish to part 1, so thank you for your time, and
My pleasure.
Look forward to part 2.
Okay.
So that's part 1 done of this 3-part series. As you heard there from my mum, it was very hard, me growing up in the early years, people telling her it's a phase, you're just comparing your children, there's nothing wrong, you're being overprotective, you're overthinking it. Finally she got a diagnosis, she knew what the issue was, so she knew how to support me better and start getting me on the right track. Part 2 is going to be the next stage of my upbringing, with going back into mainstream school, so mixing in with quote unquote normal people, the neurotypical students, what that was like, and also out in the real world, because a lot of the things that neurotypical people take for granted, people like me don't necessarily know. We don't understand the unwritten social cues and social rules, so my mum had to teach me those. Like, share and subscribe if you haven't already. If you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll catch you on the next video. See you there.